Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll be talking about women, professional women, who have risen to the pinnacles of power, and women who have made a change, made a difference to lives of our people. We've had women in the past. We had the Joan of Arc, we had Cleopatra, we have Elizabeth I, with Catherine the Great, with Marie Curie. I mean, when women are given a chance, they sometimes outperform men. But are they ever given a chance? That's the question that we're going to discuss today with three outstanding professionals who have bucked the trend and who have shown to the world that they can rise to any level given a chance. On my right is Neerja Jayal, and she taught in the Jawaharlal Nehru University from 1986 to 2021, and then retired, and then has a professorship, a chair at the King's College in London. She was also involved with the London School of Economics. She has several books to her credit, and there is one particular book which I want to mention, which is Citizenship and Its Discontents, and it's a Harvard University publication, 2013. She has also written several articles and is deeply involved in contemporary affairs, especially in the context of women. We have Neerja Chowdhury, who has recently written a phenomenal book, a book which is now actually made the headlines. It has been the #1 bestseller for almost 9 weeks. Yes. It is called How Prime Ministers Decide, published in 2023. And she's been in journalism for almost 40 years. In 1981, she got an award from the Chameli Devi Jain Award for Outstanding Media Persons. In 2009, you got the Prem Bhatia Award, and you're a columnist. You headed you were a political editor of the Indian Express for about 10 years, and you are now a contributing editor to the Indian Express. What more can I say? On my left is Malvika Rajkotia, again a woman, and it's I know the profession of law. I know how difficult it is for women to rise in the profession of law. You're a single mother, taking care of 2 kids who are now studying abroad. You have written a book called Intimacy Undone. She specializes in marriage, divorce, and family law. And she joined the bar in 1985, made a name for herself, and she is a known figure in matters relating to family and property throughout the country. So thank you very much for all of you being here. Well, let me start with you, Neerja. What is it that makes it so difficult for women to rise?
I guess one could say that it's the same across all professions. Entry barriers exist. It's hard. I mean, the simple answer would be we live in a patriarchal society. So it is that much harder for women to acquire an education than to find opportunities in the professions of their choice. I think it becomes easier for women if they come from backgrounds where education is valued, backgrounds of relative privilege, backgrounds where they can acquire cultural capital and social capital. I think all of us perhaps belong to a class which reflects that privilege and which reflects the fact that we have cultural capital, which is why we have been able to progress in ways that many other women who may be equally gifted and equally talented have not. But there are entry-level barriers, yes.
But even when you come from that cultural background, don't you have to outperform men?
Absolutely,
to be where you are?
Absolutely, you do.
Yes.
Women have to strive much harder to get to the same place as men do. And that's partly the way professions are structured. They are male clubs at the end of the day. They are old boys clubs.
Yes.
So women find it quite difficult. Let me just talk about the academy. In academia, women find they have to prove themselves they have to work much harder at proving themselves than men do. The recognition that they that they deserve and should get often does not come to them because the peer group is male dominated.
Correct.
When it comes to, for instance, publications, research, citations, referencing, male scholars tend to cite other male scholars rather than female scholars.
Correct.
And this is despite the fact that, a recent study showed that, which was of 5 countries, it showed that scientific papers by women professors or women scholars were read much more by students as well as by early career researchers than papers by men.
Okay.
So women do often work harder and they do often outperform men.
Correct.
But getting ahead in the profession is sometimes difficult. Promotion is typically slower for women than it is for men.
But if you look at school education, for example, majority of teachers at the school level are women, right?
Exactly.
There the entry level is much easier.
Apart from which, even at the level of assistant professor, you will find more women. As you go up the ladder,
that's the problem.
Thins out. Women are fewer and fewer. But it's the same with women students. As you go up the ladder, at the PhD level, there are the proportion between men and women changes quite substantially. So they may be reasonably well balanced at the postgraduate level, but at research levels, again, women are. But there are lots of reasons for that.
The same pattern must be there in your profession as well, Neerja.
Absolutely. Any profession that's competitive and demanding, very important point that as you go up the ladder, it's going to get harder. Because women have to do multitasking. I believe women are much better at multitasking, Kapil, than are men.
I agree.
And we manage to stay on the tightrope walk somehow. And, we have to stay on the tightrope walk and do everything. Of course, sometimes what is a casualty as a result, sometimes is excellence. I often feel that. Because you're dealing with so many things. If you're concentrating on one, you might do even better than you are doing. But, there are the constraints which are structural. Women getting into a profession like the media, will maternity leave, crashes for children, young the babies.
You can't keep late hours if your child is going to school.
You can't keep late hours.
You have to get up early.
Get transport.
Yes.
So many organizations now are providing.
Parent-teachers interviews, you have to, the mother goes, the father doesn't go. These are the kind of things that happen.
Absolutely. But today if you see the organizations, and I think of when I started off, Kuldeep Nair, eminent journalist, he had asked, this is in the 70s, late 70s, had asked me, would you join us? But at that time, he had said, we are very wary of women because we think it's a waiting room for marriage. And we are even thinking of an undertaking by women who say, you won't marry for 3 years. Same organization, 5 years later, said to me, we want women because we feel they're more conscientious, they're more hardworking. There was a sea change. But then also there were a few women in these organizations. Today, if you look at the newsrooms of...
They are full of women.
They are full. Indian Express may have more women in top positions. And I think so there is a sea change, both of attitude and, as you say, women have performed.
That's correct. No, but again, is this proliferation of women in your profession has something to do with the cultural milieu that she was talking about? Or is it that women from rural areas or women from a different class of the society are coming to?
I think you see, what I'm
talking... Is there a change there? That's what I'm asking.
What I'm talking about is the metro cities, where huge changes come. Tier 2 cities also, huge changes coming, huge aspirations. If you talk to women today, and there were surveys done, they will say, increase the marriage age to 21. Give us a chance before we get married to get into a profession and hold a job. And when you ask them, what kind of a job, they are not going to tell you silai, karai and that kind of thing.
Of course not.
They will tell you it's the modern profession that they want to get into. And as I travel and I'm talking to people of late, I find almost 7, 8 women out of 10, young women, will tell you, I want to go into the police or the army.
Yes.
Why? Because power, freedom, and they want to aspire to that. And their families are coming around to this. Media also is one of those professions, you know, which women want to get into.
But on field trips, for example, in the field of journalism, I know in the past that women seldom used to go to those field trips because you have to stay overnight, you have to, you know, when you're away from your family. Has that changed?
In my time, Kapil, 40 years ago, we started off with field trips. And I used to find it was also an advantage. You know, if you were covering some mass rape, gang rape that had taken place or something, I remember, and if you would just barge into the office of the collector and he couldn't throw you out because you were a woman.
Okay.
So that was the advantage. But of course, you know, I remember crossing nalas at night in Bihar in monsoon time.
Was that the norm at that time? That's what happened?
Well, that kind of thing, yes, was difficult. And I have come to the conclusion, really, apart from the structural, systemic change that are needed, you know, it used to be said that behind every successful man is a woman.
Right.
I say behind every successful woman is an understanding man.
Correct.
It could be a father who's
I'm so glad that you said understanding man. You can't be only man.
Yeah. Husband who shares your responsibilities.
Right, that's correct.
That I find
who shares your success.
Shares your success.
Yeah,
also.
you know, that's very important.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't feel threatened. And that's what most men do feel, I'm sorry to say, threatened by the success of their wives or their spouses.
And I must say,
Kapil,
when we had our son, my husband and I were paranoid about, you know, the child getting rash or something. So Arun and I would divide how we would wash the nappies under running water. And I would do it in the morning because I had work to go to and feed Nakul in the morning. Arun would do it at night.
Wow, that's
when
great.
The water came, water used to come, you know, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening.
That's camaraderie. That's camaraderie. Malvika, in your profession, how was it then and how is it now?
Well, I may be wrong, but my understanding is actually that the legal profession still continues to be quite the last male-dominated bastion. I'm not saying the only, it's there. But the movement, like both of you, Neerja, said, that it's gets more difficult at the top. So you'll have a lot of women at entry levels working and, you know, lawyers, juniors with who are preferred because they are, as you said, conscientious and so on. But when it comes to staying in the career, so there are two things. One is staying in the career, which gets difficult after you get married, after the children, etc. And then just carrying on. It's the endurance, which is quite taxing. And so that is there. There are two well-known incidents of sexual harassment, which have been quite, publicized. But the men in both those instances, that I won't name them, but they are obvious, were quite happily back at work and even almost promoted to another level. But the women have had difficulty in even coming to court after that. In one case was a lawyer. So it is a male bastion where you are defined by male patriarchal values. I am a divorce lawyer. I still deal with pleadings where a husband feels that he is justified to ask for a divorce if he puts photographs of his wife holding a cigarette and a drink and a short skirt, because, you know, she does not comply to what should be a Bharatiya Nari. So the narrative very often, even in court, keeps slipping back to these values, which is very frustrating for us, when we are trying to educate judges on this, who are, may I say, responsive. So it's a process, it's a conversation.
Not all of them are responsive.
Not all, but they are not, you also know they are not responsive to your arguments either. So that's part of the...
Not because they are men or women.
Yeah. So these are all patriarchal constructs that really define our behavior, our expectations. So when, you know, you're a woman lawyer. Now for me, I have to say, as a divorce and a family lawyer, somehow, as you quite rightly pointed out, that yes, we had access to some privilege, education, cultural capital, and so on. And then I had the advantage that I could have my office in my house. So it was easier for me to bring up my children. But yes, it does affect the pace with which you can practice. When they were small, it was important for me that I put them to bed, I read to them at night and so on, which means that the long hours that many other lawyers could keep, I just chose not to, and I don't regret it. So really, I think the benchmark of success is not really the male version of success of how much money and this and that as lawyers tend to do, but I think it is a more wholesome approach to how you have lived your life. And I feel quite lucky for all the various reasons, even while recognizing that in the process of my work, I can help in this conversation and narrative for other women.
The male client, I tell you the male mindset, the male client doesn't want to go to a woman lawyer.
No, I'm sorry, I've had many male clients.
You do family law, because in one case there's the husband, the other case there's the wife. So therefore, the male client will come to you, right? But and the wife will also come to you. But by and large, and I'm talking not just about family law, by and large, commercial litigation, all other forms of litigation, the male client doesn't want to go to women.
Yes.
Right? And because of the fact that women don't have the opportunity to rise up the ladder.
Partly that, partly, as you said, that the male club. So the access of so-and-so judge is your classmate, you've grown up together, etc. Women do not have that access to that coterie.
Because they don't have enough women on the court. For example, there's 8.8% of women in the Supreme Court representation. There's a 13.6 representation in the High Court. And there's a 36.3% representation in the lower judiciary. So the data speaks for itself.
Yes.
That unless you give them opportunities at the, and it's the lack of opportunity that has led to this, and the heart of it, and we'll come to that later, is education. But you talked about sexual abuse, right? Is that a problem in your profession?
Sexual
harassment or abuse or whatever?
Very much so.
Very much so.
Very much so. Of course, I mean, there has been an institutional response post-Vishaka, but for instance, in the JNU, we had a committee called the Gender Sensitization Committee Against Sexual Harassment. It was called GS Cash. And it worked well. The members were elected by students, teachers, staff. It worked very well, and people had trust in this committee, and the people who ran it were people of experience and expertise. A few years ago, it was replaced by the Internal Complaints Committee, the ICC, which is entirely nominated and doesn't necessarily have people of experience or expertise, does not elicit trust. Even the NGO representative, the NGO that is chosen is also often partisan, and it does not evoke trust, so that the number of, people do not have, women do not have the confidence to go to the committee and expect a fair investigation. And sometimes it can actually work. Some people have described it as a family court, which is counseling both sides, sort of sort it out amongst yourselves. So there was an institutional response to start with, which was working reasonably well. It's now hollowed out.
So otherwise, it's kept under the lid, any such
thing. May I interject here just for a minute? The Vishaka that you talk about, the committee, the Vishaka judgment of our own Supreme Court was whenever, 2000, around then. The Vishaka committee was formed only 5 years ago.
Yes.
So the court which mandated Vishaka committees to be, sexual harassment committees to be set up in all organizations, did not have one for itself. That is significant to me.
Actually, the lower you go to smaller media organization, even in the larger ones, not so much, one doesn't hear of it so much, but say a few years ago, even there's sexual harassment, and if somebody raised their voice, for all the
they'll lose their job, actually.
Then you may be hounded out. I know of an instance when this happened, I won't name the organization. And normally what happened, if you lost job in one organization and you were a good journalist, you'll be picked up by somebody else. But in this instance, nobody would touch the person with a barge pole. She would be seen as an upstart who might do that in the other organization. So it requires, as you say, the guidelines, the committee to go into it and be fair, but also support of the community.
Yes.
The media community to stand by this woman.
Correct. Does the community stand?
Sorry?
Does the community stand by women in these
Well,
situations?
people are more silent. Women journalists, yes.
Yes, of course.
But
I'm
otherwise,
talking about management. I'm not talking about women journalists.
management, if it's a progressive one, might sort it out. If not, there can be silence. And lot of women will put up with a lot, you know, before they actually go in for a campaign. But then now I find things are, you know, very different also. Women are that much more aware, and even sexist language they react to
Right.
than was the case when I first entered the profession.
After a particularly notorious incident of sexual harassment, which was well publicized, soon after that, there were many senior lawyers who did not want to have women in their offices any longer.
That's true.
There were many judges who said they did not want women interns clerking with them. So that was a deep problem. But yes, even amongst us in the Delhi High Court, for example, we've gathered just a informal sort of a group which is collected on WhatsApp over the years since COVID, and it's now has a strength of 500. So it's just a network of support and conversation, which I think has been quite enabling.
This reminds me of reminds me of something. In a couple of years ago, there was a there was an initiative at JNU to counsel girls. They were being described as girls, not women. How to draw the fine line, a tangible fine line between bantering and sexual harassment. So in other words, exactly like you were saying, the onus is on the women to prevent sexual harassment.
Yes.
The onus is never on the men.
Yes,
Correct.
yes. What did you do? What were you wearing?
Exactly.
All of that.
Right. But that's also the cultural milieu in which we live today. That's the
That
other
she is
problem.
responsible for what happens to her. He can.
Then the Me Too movement.
Yes.
You remember what an upsurge. So many women going public.
Correct.
And after
It's
that,
all
complete
silence, complete silence. Now, I want to give you some statistics which may interest you. Take, for example, the agricultural sector. 76% of the rural women or women are in the agricultural sector, and 11% in cities. In industry, 8%. In the rural sector, 25% in cities. Education, 3% in the rural sector, 12% in cities. Trade, retail, 3% and 12%. Business, 3% and 12%. Construction, 3% and 3%. So if you look at it, most women are employed in agriculture, right? And that's where the problem arises. They never get an opportunity to get an education. And how will that be remedied? What do we do about that? Either agriculture and of course, 76%.
So it's also wage earners. What is the value of the daily wage earned compared to the male? There's that aspect as well.
No, that's another
There is a
serious issue.
disparity even there. So
There's a
that even if they want to be agricultural, it's all right, provided they have adequate wages to even bring up their children for nutrition and so on, and the next generation can move on. But that is really the lowest paid or non-wage workers at the lowest level. That's the problem.
The reason why I raised this issue is that if really a large section of the women in this country are employed in agriculture.
But how much of that 76% is actually wage?
Exactly, that's the important
Because
thing.
a lot of it is then working on family farms, however small they might be.
Correct.
And so it's unpaid labor.
Correct.
It's unpaid. It's the equivalent of. It's really the equivalent of household work.
That's right.
Unpaid care work, unpaid household work, unpaid agricultural work.
And I'd like to follow that.
All of
up.
these.
Now,
Tea gardens, for example, all the women are employed in tea gardens.
But it would be good to know how much of that 76% is actually non-wage labor.
And I'd like to say, when you say it's housework, then even in divorce law, for example, when the conversation is around maintenance and alimony rights, she is invariably treated as not equal because she's not a earner or certainly not the dominant earner. So the devaluation of her very presence invisibilizes her in monetary terms. So it becomes very patronizing, the kind of handouts that she will get as maintenance and alimony.
In the context of a rural economy, you're going to have women who are actually going to work for the family and the farm. That's true. But the question is that their children too work there, right? So they participate in that. They never get the opportunity then for appropriate schooling, right? And how do they rise up the ladder? That's a very, very serious issue.
How your question, what do we do about that? The only answer is education, education, and
That's correct. And here, this government is spending less and less on education.
Yes.
You see, that's the sad part.
Health
and education.
health and nutrition is
Health,
so
nutrition.
Nutrition,
Because
more
the
than
ladder need
50%
not be
are
linear.
Maximum number of stunted children in the
Stunted
world are in India.
undernourished.
Undernourished children are in India. Maximum number of
Anemia.
anemic women
Yes.
are in India.
Yes.
Right? And what have we done about that? We talk about, Sashakt Bharat and, 2047 and, that we'll be conquering the world. First conquer the problems that are facing you in the country. For the future of this country, I personally think is be in jeopardy if we do not invest in education and health.
Yeah, and free gas is not going to do it. Because free gas is not enough. Education and nutrition to be able to bring up your children
Absolutely.
is what is a priority.
Now, if you look at representation of women in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, I'm sorry to say that most countries in the world have far greater representation, though we are the most populous country in the world. It's Lok Sabha is 15.2%, Rajya Sabha is 13%, and the world average is 26.5%. And countries like Rwanda, 61%, Cuba, 53%, Nicaragua, 52%, Mexico, 52%, France, 37%, Germany, 35%.
UK?
I mean, Sri Lanka is the only one below us. Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh are ahead of us.
That's right.
I mean, where is this country, going? If 50% of our population are not empowered, how will ever be a Viksit Bharat?
And in assemblies, it's much lower.
lower.
And when women are entering every other profession,
Yes.
science, technology, pilots, doctor, lawyers, of course, every profession, why is politics closed their doors to? And taken so long for women to enter.
Correct.
Now they've passed this bill, Parliament, to say that they will get 1/3 representation, but they have linked it to delimitation.
That's correct.
Now, having linked it to delimitation, certainly it's not going to happen before 2029.
Absolutely.
And if delimitation gets into legal wrangles between
it
South
will.
and North,
Which it will.
which will happen,
That's correct.
then it may get postponed to 2034, maybe 2039. Even though Parliament has made a commitment, but it's not as if it's going to happen tomorrow.
That's
This
right.
promise will not be. When there is, Kapil, a pool of women readied at the local level,
Right.
in the local bodies, in the panchayats,
Yes.
1/3 representation.
They're doing quite well, actually.
And they are doing
There are
extremely well.
candidates available today.
They are doing
Stand for
extremely
assembly
well.
and-
Right.
Bar association presidents, for example, office bearers, presidents, but they're powerful positions, as we know. But we have never had a woman president of the Bar Association, either of the Supreme Court or
Like
the
very
High Courts.
few women vice chancellors. It's the same
Right,
thing there.
right. No,
Very
but
few
Bar
women
Association
heading-
happens every
heading-
year.
heading
There's
news
a
organizations.
difference. Very few.
There's a difference in numbers, so it is significant. In contrast, Pakistan Supreme Court Bar Association did have Asma Jahangir as their president. So it is, also.
You just talked about women earning less than men.
Yeah.
Women earn less, and I'm talking about wage now, 1.53 times less than men in 2021-22, and 1.2 times less than men in 21-22, 22-23. That's the difference there. And there, when pandemic happened, 70% of the women lost their jobs. It's the men retained their
And
jobs.
many have not managed to re-enter
Many
the workforce.
That's right.
Even the demonetization, because you see, they were working, a lot of women, it was not that they were holding black money, but they were participating in the informal economy, be it in weaving, daily wage, pickle making, whatever was happening, all of that was affected
That's
as
correct.
well.
That's correct. Now, let me move on to something slightly different. Now, this whole revolution, our social revolution, is happening after the liberalization of the economy, I believe, right? Liberalization has brought in more opportunities. Women, therefore, want to get educated, and they want to seize those opportunities and be something in life. But that's affecting a small section of the economy, personally, I think. And a certain class of women, as you rightly said in the beginning, are moving up the ladder quite quickly. But a lot of this has not touched a large section of our economy, right? And therefore, we are creating at two levels of participation of women. At the level where they can participate, mostly in urban areas, and a level where they cannot participate. And there seems to be no solution for that. This also is creating problems in society, because in a male-dominated world, the male does not want the wife to earn. The wife has to earn on many occasions, because in a liberalized economy, you have to make ends meet. You send your school to children, you want to send them to private school, the woman has to earn, right? You want the best things for your children, the woman has to earn. And therefore, on the one hand, there is the need to earn, and on the other hand is the male mindset that I don't want my wife
Partly
to go to work,
that, yeah, not
right?
even now.
And that's a conundrum that we're going to face in society. What's your view on that?
Malvika, go ahead.
I think it's partly also, I was reading
And lots of divorces are happening
Maria
on that
Mais,
count also.
the anthropologist, on this, because she said that even a lot of it is a class thing. I can afford for her not to work. So that's also one element. But however, she will want to work for her freedom, for some autonomy, for some self-respect, which again is a way of controlling, is what I see as in my work from, not just amongst lawyers, but the cross-section of family law and my clients.
Kapil, there's one thing I can never forget. I was in Muzaffarnagar district. I'd gone to see Japanese encephalogists, and I was going to a family, affected family, and a young girl was there, so she was taking me, a 10-year-old Dalit girl.
Okay.
And I got talking to her, and her father she'd been pulled out of school, her father was a drunkard, her mother had to work, the usual story, she had to look after the sibling. So then I asked her, what would you like to be?
Okay.
Complete silence.
Okay.
I tried again and again. It took me 10 minutes and I didn't give up. At the end of 10 minutes, only one word she uttered: computer. So for this Dalit 10-year-old, her dream was to do something with computers.
Correct.
So this is they have stars in their eyes.
That's true.
For people to say women are happy doing this, that and the other.
Correct.
That's not true.
Right.
That's absolutely not true. And I come back to increasing the age of marriage. If you increase it to 21, parents will be compelled to keep the girls in school, college,
Right,
give
I
them
agree.
the education, because they won't want them to sit at home or to roam around. So I think this would be one way. The government had a committee. It recommended this. I don't know why they haven't implemented it.
No, I think that's a very important point.
And the other thing, of course, is, I feel moving around, there is so much energy in the young women of India today. If you tap it, you'll transform
So if
India.
she wanted to be a computer wala, why aren't there computers in the hands of women?
That's
In
right.
the hands of our children.
We know that families, especially in the kinds of sections of society that you were just speaking about, the less well-off, will tend to put their resources behind boys' education more than girls' education.
Exactly.
So the intra-household distribution of
That's right.
income, the household budget, it will always privilege boys' education
Always.
over girls' education.
That's correct.
That is a big stumbling block.
That's
Or
right.
incentivize.
Right.
Incentivize it for girls, which some governments have done, state
But
governments.
if you remember, Neerja, I was the one who was Minister for Human Resource Development, thought of the Akash tablet, right?
That's right.
And I wanted to take it forward, and I had the IIT Bombay working on it, and within about 7,000 to 10,000 rupees, we could actually manage it. They shelved the program. My idea was, and this is a big problem in the teaching profession, that you don't have teachers in provinces, in our states. You just don't have teachers. And the reason is very simple, that when an advertisement is issued to recruitment of teachers, it's not done district-wise. It's done state-wise. So on the merit list, if somebody is to get a job, and he's living 200 kilometers away from the school, you'll have an absentee teacher.
That's right.
Right? So one of the biggest problems facing education is lack of teachers. And the only way to solve it is to give a computer in the hands of the child. Now, a mathematics teacher in Delhi, if you had connectivity and the fiber optic network laid, would be able to teach 500 students or 10,000 students in one go, right? And much of these problems can be solved. But the question is, our nation doesn't look at these things. We're building 7-star establishments. We're building huge, I don't know what we're wanting to do. We're buying a lot of stuff from all over the world, but we're just disregarding the necessities of our community.
This is what is called the neoliberal form of politics, isn't it?
Governments is.
But Kapil, one thing I will say, and I feel this again as I move around, that you can delay this process of women moving forward. You will not be able to stop it.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
This century is going to belong to us.
I agree.
That's true.
I have no doubts about it.
And particularly to younger women.
I have absolutely no doubts about it. But look at the data. World Bank says, and this is the 2021 data, that 31% of women in India drop out of the workforce, particularly within the formal sector. This is another very big issue. And why do they drop out? Because in the meantime, they have a kid, there are family obligations, so they don't work anymore. So you are wasting.
They even drop out of higher education.
Correct. They're wasting talent. You're wasting capital.
We have no daycare facilities for students who are married and have children.
Right.
Maternity leave is something that 2 high courts have turned down for women students because, insisting on attendance requirements. So there are so many obstacles, but to return to the point that we were making earlier, I remembered what I was going to say, which is political parties tend to shape the narrative in a particular way. For them, women, it's all about cooking gas. It's about subsidies of rations. It's about free rations.
You're right.
It's about, construction subsidies for toilets and households, which is fine. But why are these only women's issues? They are not women's issues. They are household issues. The consumers of these goods are whole households. They're not just individual women. Why do political parties not say that for the girl child, a tablet or a computer? Why do they not say that? Why do they instead focus on cooking?
I'm waiting for the period when a political party says that.
No, they had tried to say Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, but it was quite meaningless because it didn't translate into any meaningful education.
Whether to beti bacha nahi paye.
बचा नहीं पाए.
और पढ़ा भी नहीं पाए.
अभी नहीं पाए.
तो ये क्या बात है?
Political parties also don't have to wait for reservation in assemblies and parliament. They can give it in.
That's what I say. You can do it anyway. Regardless of it, we are going to give tickets.
अब क्या हो रहा है कि जो प्रधानमंत्री की योजना है 5 kilos for every person. So that means कि 25 किलो. 25 kilos in a household, 25 किलो तो कोई कंज्यूम भी नहीं कर सकता. उसका होता क्या है कि 5 किलो कंज्यूम होता है, 20 को बेच देते हैं.
या आता भी नहीं है. अब कल कोई क्या
What I'm trying to say is that a lot of that money should go into investment in the girl child. Is the point that I was making, and that's the point that you were making, and that's very.
But political parties do have a responsibility, like both Malvika and Neerja just said, to put up more women candidates.
In any case.
In any case,
yes,
regardless of. And many of the countries that you mentioned, by the way, are doing it through that route, where political parties are legally mandated to have X percentage of women.
No, BJD party, they have said 33% of our candidates will be women. I'm very happy to hear that.
That's right.
And all political parties.
So long as they put women up in constituencies which are not losing constituencies, because winnability is always a criteria.
That's true.
So is it a token?
And why 33?
Why 33?
But even the token.
Why not fearlessly and unashamedly say 50?
These things have to happen incrementally. Let's be a little practical.
But it still needs to be asked.
In panchayats, we went from 33. In many states, have turned to 50.
Yeah, so that's all right.
It's been successful. It's been a successful experiment.
Let me give you another data. Survey shows that 58% of women employees in India quit their job due to increased family responsibilities post-marriage. In fact, 41% of women pointed towards lack of family support.
That is a reality.
That's the social reality.
I think that a lot of the problem is the acceptance as a norm of marriage as inevitable. It is almost that it is an inevitable rite of passage. But the moment that becomes less important, things will change.
Not just it's considered like, it's like a normative thing.
Yes.
And in the current sort of ideological ecosystem in which we live, it's even more patriarchal and even more regressive.
That's right.
Those norms are become even more important.
That's right.
I mean, the way you see celebrations of things like Karwa Chauth and so on, there's a kind of valorization of a certain kind of female stereotype.
And it's just this based on this cliche, marriage is the core unit of fabric of society, which is not necessarily true. That's a fallacy. And if it is, then it's problematic.
The other day I read something that it was on the net, that somebody went to a showroom to buy a car, and there was a lady there, woman, and she said, "Sir, what do you want to?" He said, "Let me meet your manager." She said, "But I'm the manager." So the mindset, she's a woman, she's asked me this question, she can't be the manager.
What does she know about a car?
So that's the kind of mindset that men have, which is what's most important. But I tell you, we've had a fascinating discussion, and I'm so glad that you're here for this discussion, because we need to sensitize people in this country as to how important a woman is for the Republic of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.